Likely for as long as I could speak, I was playing video games. They were an exciting medium of entertainment that allowed me to go on personal adventures that wouldn't have been possible if I was watching a movie or reading a book. I always had grand dreams of going on huge adventures that really only video games could take me on. They were my form of escapism. I was the odd one out in every single class, an introverted outcast for pretty much all of my life. Maybe I had poisoned my brain from a dozen too many hours of Pokemon? I didn't mind though, because I knew when I'd get home, I'd be taken to worlds beyond my wildest dreams. Unfortunately, the unhealthy nature of my lifestyle was pretty much always a step ahead of me. I was incredibly chubby and an active child, something that I'd be bullied for throughout all of elementary and middle school, and I didn't really have a friend group at all. I had little social skills because all I was ever thinking about was how much I'd love to go home and play some Sonic the Hedgehog. I was never living my best life, and in my first year of middle school, a catastrophe occurred in my life that would only further lead me down a sad and lonely path for years to come. Someone I had held close to my heart ended up committing suicide, introducing all these confused and scared emotions into my head. I had never really taken any social cues that people didn't like me before, but after the idea that someone could take their life because they felt alone in the world, I couldn't really think of anything else. I took all the bullying as a sign that I was really alone in this world and that all this time, people that I thought of as friends were simply out to get me. I went from an already sheltered child into an incredibly sheltered teenager. Video games were still my escape, but slowly as the years went on, my passion, as well as my energy to do much of anything, began to slowly fade away. There were times where I thought I was getting my life in order, only for the unfortunate status quo to catch up with me. It wasn't until I took a journey into a game that would make me challenge all the self-loathing that had been ingrained into me. A place that took me on a journey that I will never forget. I took a trip to a place known as Celeste Mountain. It was late January 2018, almost a full month after the new year. I had just finished one of my last semesters of high school, but only just barely. I almost flunked a couple of classes simply because I had no interest in school. I knew something was wrong, and I told my parents I'd be willing to see a therapist again, but trying to schedule that was a nightmare, and never came into fruition. With a new marking period beginning, I knew I had to do something to improve, but I didn't really have any interest in much except continue to play games in my free time. I had finished the game I had been playing since Christmas on and off, so I was in the mood for something new. A friend recommended a game called Celeste to me, something that I originally didn't think much of. I appreciated the intention, but in the past many of their suggestions led to impulse purchases that I ended up regretting in the long run. Still, I ended up picking up the game and, almost immediately, I was hooked. Celeste is a game that stars young adult Madeline, who one day decided to get away from her daily routine to travel to Celeste Mountain, a fictional mountain that exists within Canada. The game starts with her trying to reassure herself that this is what she wants to do, asking herself, why are you so nervous? After speaking to herself for a bit, the game starts with a short tutorial section meant to help you get used to the controls and avoid some basic obstacles in the game. The gameplay blends in with the story fairly well, as Madeline quickly asks the Elder of the Mountain, simply known in promotional materials as Granny, about the obstacles on her driveway. Granny laughs off Madeline, stating, "If my driveway almost did you in, the mountain might be a bit much for you." Madeline, not amused by this, continues on her way, disregarding the Elder's warnings that the mountain may make her see things she isn't ready to see. Madeline crosses the collapsing bridge to enter the first world of the game, once again reassuring herself that she can do this, despite her brief moment of panic. Chapter 1, being the introductory chapter, doesn't introduce too much story other than the introduction of a traveler named Theo, a man who wishes to become a photographer in order to feel closer to his grandfather. Unlike Madeline, Theo has more purpose in climbing the mountain besides leaving the house, as he's heard there are ancient ruins up ahead that would be perfect to capture and post online. Madeline doesn't quickly warm up to Theo, but trusts him enough to hold a conversation with him. In the second chapter, after taking a rest beyond the Forsaken City setting of the first chapter, another character is thrown into the mix, being introduced as part of you, and known in promotional materials as Madeline. Madeline is a representation of what Madeline considers to be her inner demons. Madeline tries to convince Madeline that climbing the mountain is dangerous and a complete waste of both of their times, but Madeline doesn't want to hear any of it, asking her, "Are you the weak part of me, or the lazy part?" This encounter leads to a chase scene with Madeline attempting to get Madeline to walk home, though right near a payphone, the chase ends with Madeline receiving a call from her ex. This is perhaps the first time I saw my own experiences reflected within Celeste. Madeline's rocky relationship with her ex seems to imply that she often leads herself into unfulfilling relationships in order to try and feel some love for herself. I found it very easy as a mentally ill teenager to try and enter relationships with the hope that I'll be able to find someone who can love me for who I am, only to burden them with too many of my problems and drive them away, never to speak with them again. Madeline realizes while on the phone that she is dreaming this whole scenario, leading herself to ask, "Why am I even climbing this stupid mountain?" This dream I felt also reflected my own personal experiences. Often nights I have nightmares about people from my past coming back, usually with me letting them down, or them letting me know how much I failed them. Just a way for my brain to taunt me and say I haven't done well enough. The third chapter takes place within a haunted hotel, run by the ghost of a man known as Mr. Oshiro. Oshiro is a lost soul, wandering around the hotel as if it's still running, unable to let go of the past and accept that it's no longer in operation. The place is an absolute mess, though, and Oshiro is devastated by this revelation as he's been trying his best to get Madeline to stay with him rather than continue on her climb. Madeline does offer to help with the cleanup, with Oshiro still muttering that all is doom and gloom for his hotel. Theo meets with Madeline again, warning her to not make Oshiro her problem, though Madeline tells him that she feels as though she must do this in order to feel as though she's done something good with her life. Theo escapes the premise, leaving Madeline to deal with Oshiro on her own. I saw myself reflected in the way Madeline reacts, and her reasoning for staying behind, as I have long suffered with my own sort of savior complex. Even though I struggled with many of my own problems, I took it upon myself to be the one who was always cheering up everyone around me, even if that ended up overwhelming me in the end. There was a woman I once knew who had an incredibly troubled past, but also had a history of being incredibly uncomfortable around people much, much younger than her. I took it upon myself to try and re-educate her, try and heal her wounded soul, but in the end she ended up falling into old habits, as well as creeping on many of my friends. I wasn't able to save her, and that realization was initially devastating. The realization that you can't help everyone is incredibly difficult to cope with when you suffer from depression, and Madeline deals with this realization poorly, as Madeline escapes from a mirror in the presidential suite and rips into Oshiro in his hotel. Madeline leaves the hotel and Oshiro behind, with her ego in more shambles than it had been when the journey started. The fourth chapter is mostly incredibly quiet, with a quick scene of Granny offering to bring Madeline back to her car, leading to swift rejection. The purpose of the chapter is simply to reflect on the events of the previous chapters, but also to lead into what might be the game's most famous scene. When Madeline reaches the end of her current climb, she's greeted by a gondola, as well as her new friend Theo. Together they ride the gondola to the location of the Mirror Temple, but are promptly stopped halfway through. Theo attempts to get the gondola running again, but ends up breaking the lever that controls the machine. While the game had mentioned Madeline having depression and anxiety before, this is where it really comes out. In a scene where she has a full-on panic attack, yelling and panicking as she lashes out at Theo for breaking the machine. In her erratic behavior, Theo teaches Madeline a trick that he learned from his grandfather in the event of a panic. Try and picture a feather in front of you. This trick is meant to help with controlled breathing, and it works, leading to the gondola continuing to move forward and Madeline's panic attack coming to an end. Breathing a sigh of relief, Madeline and Theo are safe for now, till they both enter the setting of the fifth chapter, the Mirror Temple. Upon arriving at the entrance of the Mirror Temple, Theo runs right in without much of a care in the world, believing that he could capture some amazing pictures of the ancient area, post them online for a lot of attention. Madeline isn't so sure, though. She believes entering isn't a good idea. Eventually, however, she does decide to follow after Theo, and finds his smartphone on the floor. She stops herself from panicking using the feather trick, and continues onward until she finds Theo inside one of the many mirrors of the temple. Madeline wants to help Theo get out, but before Theo can offer any input on escaping the mirror, he believes that he's being chased and runs off from the scene. After more exploration, Madeline finds a large mirror and is immediately sucked into a bizarro version of the temple, with giant eye monsters representing more of her inner demons throughout. Madeline asks Madeline about what's going on, with Madeline telling her that the temple is shaping itself around Madeline's psyche, and Theo's disappearance, as well as the appearance of the monsters, is her fault. Without much hesitation, however, Madeline travels deeper into the temple to attempt to find her lost friend, visibly upset by the fact that she's a stranger in her own world. Eventually she meets up with Theo, finding him completely encased in a crystal. Somehow, using all her strength, she carries Theo and manages to escape the temple, frazzled by the fact that the only friend she has on this journey realizes how dangerous her mind is. The sixth chapter, and perhaps the most important and enlightening one, is the one I also hold most dear to my heart. Unlike previous chapters, it starts with a long conversation between Madeline and Theo. Almost 10 minutes of exposition. During this conversation, Madeline tries to explain what depression is like to Theo, stating, "It's like I'm at the bottom of the ocean. I can't see anything in any direction. It's claustrophobic, yet I feel exposed." This line really helped me connect with Madeline. It really shows that the creators of the game understood depression, and weren't just making her depressed to create conflict and angst. Madeline, having just had a pretty long conversation with Theo, feels the best she had in her entire journey, goes to sleep with her head held high, thinking she knows what she has to do. She believes that if she gets rid of the part of her that the mountain gave form to, she can move on from her depression and truly grow as a person. She wakes up and has a one-on-one with Madeline, stating that she's setting her free. Madeline lashes out at Madeline, leading Madeline to have a panic attack. Madeline tries the feather trick, prompting Madeline to chuckle and say, "You're going to think about a feather to stop me? You are not above me, and you can't climb this mountain. It's time to accept that." Madeline's panic leads her to fall down the mountainside, hitting what is the physical and mental representation of rock bottom. The concept of rock bottom is perhaps one I understand far too well. Whenever I feel as though I've built myself up, it only takes one horrible incident to knock me down and make me start all over from the beginning. I always think back to middle school, with the only time I've ever failed the class. I remember the words of my father so well. "You'll never be able to get a job that isn't physical labor." For a depressed young teen, those words devastated me, and it was my first experience hitting that incredible low. Yet I still remember other words, which I had strangely heard first from a Some Call Me Johnny video.
Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom in order to see that something is terribly wrong.
Every time I had reached this low point, I clung to those words, and believed that I had found out what was wrong. But each time I had failed, the words began to lose their meaning more and more. But Celeste helped me realize what was truly wrong, and why I kept hitting that rock bottom. It made me realize why I kept hitting those low points in my life. I was afraid of myself. Distraught that her adventure had come to an unfortunate end, she believes that Madeline was right. She never could have climbed the mountain. She tries at the very least to climb out of the cavern though, so she can go home, and is greeted by Granny one last time. Granny's aware of the mountain's powers, and realizes that Madeline has been fighting herself the entire time. She tells Madeline to go and talk to Madeline, try to figure out why she's so scared. Madeline had never thought of herself like that, being afraid of progression and being afraid of changing the status quo in order to live a better life. She's afraid that the past is going to hold her back, and that she can't use it to her advantage. This line was not only eye-opening for Madeline, but for myself as well. I never truly realized that my own past could be used to boost myself rather than hinder. It gave me wisdom that I never knew I had, perhaps had kept hidden away because I was keeping a gloomy attitude. My past may be a series of unfortunate events, but it doesn't have to hold me back. My own bad experiences can be used to help people avoid the same mistakes, can be used to advocate for better treatment of mentally ill children, can be used to let people know that you're never alone. Everyone struggles in this world. one way or another. It was a realization that changed my life in perspective. It's not an easy road, and Celeste makes that clear by having an incredibly difficult and long-winded fight, where Madeline tries to get Madeline to agree and help her climb the mountain. But that makes the moment where Madeline embraces her dark side all the more sweeter. It makes her physically stronger in the game, and when I first finished that 6th chapter, I cried. I finally understood the meaning of those words I had heard so long ago. Rock bottom is not the end. It's a new beginning. It was a new beginning for me, for I finally understood myself better. A video game, the very same medium that had made me such an awkward, introverted kid, had now told me a story personal enough to help me understand and contextualize my own depression and trauma throughout my life. The rest of the journey simply follows Madeline and Madeline working together to climb the mountain, and it feels so rewarding towards the end. It was the first time in a while that I was truly happy finishing a game. I have found why I continue to love this hobby, and I found a reason to love myself again. I could easily be my own worst enemy, but I can also use all my past experiences to push myself further towards a happier future for not only myself, but the people around me. I hope in the future there's more games that are as special as Celeste. I hope there's more games that can incite hope in people. I hope there's more games that can help people understand themselves and be comfortable with themselves, and most importantly, love themselves. Just as the game states itself, Celeste Mountain is a place of healing.
Oh. There's a few team members who couldn't be here tonight, and I know they're watching. So Gabby and Sven and the Power Up guys, we love you and we wish you were here. We're nothing without our support network, so thanks to like our partners and our family and our friends who are amazing. And I'm pretty sure my parents account for like half of our votes. So hi Mom and Dad, I love you. We got like completely lost in the work in making this game, and we kind of forgot that people would eventually play it. So the reception has just been like really overwhelming. And man, my heart is beating so fast. I'm like at a loss for things to say all year about the reception. So there is one thing I want to say though. If Celeste has helped you come to terms with mental illness, I just want to say that you deserve credit for that. That change came from inside of you, and you're capable of a lot more. Thank you.